make it a little more, we need to get the people up and about. Fundamentally, my talk is going to be to ask you, why do you want to hear me? I mean, what is it that how am I going to add value to you? Okay, so I'm going to share, obviously, a little bit about my writing journey, which came about fairly late in life. Oh, it's on. Can you put, the thing? So that's me. Just to tell you that what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about my journey. And it's a little difficult, I'll stand on the side if that's fine. Yeah. And I'm also going to talk about my two books, but fundamentally why it's going to be interesting is because one is fiction and one is non-fiction. Because I write both. I love to write fiction, but as any published author will know today, the market is for non-fiction. Because that's what everybody tells you to write, because the fiction is not selling. Alright, and that's of course something which has happened in the pandemic. And we're going to talk more about it, but more interestingly, what is the difference between fiction and non-fiction? And I'm going to open it up for questions and any kind of thing which you may have, and your opinions would count as well. Okay, so it's not really a talk show in that sense. Alright, so those are the two books of mine. They're available there, going at very, very steep discounts. So $200 for the non-fiction and $250 for the, $200 for the non-fiction and $250 for the non-fiction. So just to tell you that my life was like any other, take a safe career, do your engineering, do your MBA, you'll get a job, you have to eat. So I did my engineering and mechanical, and then I did my MBA from IIM Bangalore, and I was then trying to negotiate the choppy water of finance for 17 plus years. I did work in Bank of America, HSBC. And then finally, suddenly I took a leap of faith in 2005, and that's when my entire family, other than my immediate family, turned against me saying that, look, you're getting a salary check. What is the sudden booth of trying to set up a company? So I said, look, I'm 42 already, I'll get too old and scared, so let me do it now. So that is when I set up my company called Bridgepoint Solutions, which is a training and consulting company in the banking domain. And we have set it up in 2005. We are around for 17 years. So maybe it was not such a bad decision. All right. Okay. But what actually happened is because this is about authorship. So let's talk about, because of the fact that we saw one crisis after the other. So 2005 we set up. 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, Bear Stearns collapsed. The markets went to a total dizzy. It was a very, very bad year for us. Just 3 years into our starting. And then of course demonetization happened in 2016 and the pandemic in 2020. But this is what the message is. The message is that you can turn every adversity into an opportunity. So when the demon was on, I sat and wrote a novel in 4 months. Because my business was not there, so I just sat and wrote. And I used to do that. And that is one of the main things I think anyone who's in the writing, anyone who's seriously into writing knows that you have to have some discipline in writing. Unless you put in about 1,000 words a day, you're never going to come out with a book. Alright, so you can do all desultory stuff, you can tear off stuff, you can throw it about, but you must spend that time. So my fiction came out. I had written a fiction before that, but that was a cross genre. It was it was a crime and magic realism. That book is still with me. I wrote that in 2015. The publishers don't want to touch it because it's cross genre, and I don't want to change the story. So I said I'll wait for the time for the market to turn. Hopefully it'll turn at one point of time. But the other one, which is Scarred Earth, which is going to come out early 23, which is going to be my first full-length novel, the fiction. The 2020 pandemic was actually good for me because I actually came out with the anthology in May 20, which is It Happens, which you saw. And I also came out with the non-fiction in January 22. Both of them got published during the time of the pandemic. One was written, of course, the stories were there, but the other one was written and published all in this time. Okay, I was a very, very accidental writer. So 2014, there was a story which was on a computer. My friend forced me to put it in a contest. It won. So that's how it started. And then the Times of India, I think a lot of people here may have participated. They used to give prompts. It happened in 15, 16, 17, 18. There were basically 3 seasons. And every author used to come up with a prompt and he had to create a 3,000-word story around it. So that is where I started actually writing. Because, maybe it was the corporate thing, we're always racing deadlines. So we had this situation where there was a prompt, it had a month, you had to write it within a month, and at the end of the month, you had to submit it. So I actually had a clutch of I wrote for most of the prompts. So there were about 10, 11 authors for every season. So I had a clutch of about 30 stories, short stories, or 15 of which got published in this anthology, It Happens. I also participated in the first composite novel, Crossed and Knotted, which was very crazy because authors from all over India wrote a story which had to be linked to the previous story. So you actually had a composite novel. It was a very, very crazy experience, but a good experience. And then, of course, 2020 and 2022, my fiction and non-fiction came out. The prompts, my stories got selected, by the stalwarts of the literary firmament. So Amitav Ghosh, Ashwin Sanghi, Upamanyu Chatterjee, Vivek Shanbhag, Nayantara Sehgal, Tuhin Sinha. Sudha Murthy also picked up my short story. It was not for the Times of India contest. It was a book she was putting together. It was called Something Happened on the Way to Heaven. Mine is the first story which appears there. It's called Acceptance, and it was very crazy because a number of years later I found that it was actually being taught in Bangalore University. I never knew about it. Okay, it was one of the short stories in the program. And Ravinender Singh also picked up another short story of mine called The Garib Rath. So this is the fiction. And of course, this one in 2021, it was awarded. I got the best storyteller by the Navi Mumbai of Commerce and Industry in association with the Great Human University, which was a good thing, but actually that is not really something I hold. Tomorrow when I give a talk, the Kyoto Publishing Award will also feature in that talk. But I think what was more important was this. This is what Ashwin Sanghi wrote about my short story. This is what Vinita, she's basically the person who's helming the entire Times of India Write-India contest. And this is something I'm going to take with me. The only thing is I'm extremely humbled by these statements, and I only hope that I can live up to it, because that's a huge challenge. I'm not really worried about what are the successes I get, but I should never disappoint these people. And that is going to be my endeavor. So whenever I write, this is something at the back of my mind which keeps playing, So, but of course, these are what I cherish the most. Who had just come out with an anthology, which is not even a proper, fiction. It's not. So, so I must talk about my agent. He's Mr. Suhail Mathur. A lot of you may know. I would encourage all of you who have not kind of approached him to do so, because they are looking for authors, and he's a very good friend, philosopher, and guide. So he told me, look, you write well, but unfortunately, fiction is not selling. Because it was the Times. Now the question is, why did I write about this dated scam? It's extremely. Everybody knows about the story of this scamster who used to, who basically gamed the India security non-judicial stamps. But the question was that there was a lot of information, tons of newspaper articles, videos, and the reason why I'm mentioning it is because this brings me to trying to write non-fiction and you're trying to get the research done. There can be writing. So there was a lot of information which was not very cohesive. There was a lot of intrigue. Now this is something which really got me. Because here was a scam which was a 20,000 crore rupee scam. When the CBI was put in charge, and that is another big monkey story as to why the CBI got the whole case, why was it taken over from the SIT and the stamp it and so on. They actually reduced the stamp value to 172 crores. You will not believe this. Alright, when the fines against Delhi was 252 crores, when the income tax claims against him was 190 crores. So I said, how is this even possible? Obviously there were a lot of things which people were trying to get buried. So that was one of the reasons why it was there. Nirav Modi or Vijay Mallya, who's a very suave kind of a white-collar crime criminal, he was actually a very laid-back person who actually got thrown out of his first job. So it was very, very interesting, and that's why I kind of picked up the book and I said, I'm going to do this. The other reason why I really did it is because there was no actual book on Delhi, which was very surprising to me. So Sanjay Gupta, who's a reporter to whom that SIT report was leaked, he wrote something in the Hindi vernacular. And then Zaidi and Rajesh Singh wrote another book called Dangerous Minds. It's a fairly famous book, where only one story was Delhi. So there was no story on Delhi. So I said, I'm going to create it now. The question is, how did I create it? The way I created is I went to the court cases against Delhi. So I looked at something like 200 cases, of which 48 had got transferred to the CBI, and I created my story entirely from those cases, because it had to be the true thing. And of course, there were lots and lots of dots. Okay, so the sandalwood smuggler Veerappan got involved because one of the police officers took money from Delhi.